right, so there's two different kinds of eclipses. There's a solar eclipse and there's a lunar eclipse. The solar eclipse is when the sun is blocked by the moon, right? You're looking at the sun and, it's blocked by the moon. Of course, you don't look at the sun, normally because it hurts your eyes, right? But it's blockage. Now with a lunar eclipse, you're looking at the moon, right? And it's being eclipsed, but what's really happening is the Earth's shadow is moving across it, right? So it gets darker. Now let's take a look. This particular picture here is actually to scale of the Earth and the moon. Is pretty good. One thing I will mention about this though is that this is about the right size of the moon. If the sun's shining on the Earth and the moon gets in the way, obviously the shadow is not going to be big enough to cover the entire Earth, right? You have to be right under the shadow in order to see the eclipse. Otherwise, you won't see it. So solar eclipses, when the moon is blocking the sun, are a lot more rare and actually like way more dazzling. We're going to get to solar eclipses actually in the next lesson. Mostly what I want to do is get into lunar eclipses. So lunar eclipses now, since this Earth is bigger than the moon, obviously it's entirely possible for the moon to pass, right behind into the Earth's shadow, right? And so let's see, here's the Earth and here's the moon. Yeah, if the moon passes in the Earth's shadow, and then we're looking at it from the Earth. You can notice a couple things about this. One is that the moon is in the Earth's shadow. Anybody looking at the moon will be able to see it's in the shadow. So your chances of seeing a lunar eclipse are really, really good. If you pay any attention to like astronomy in the news, you'll definitely be able to see total lunar eclipses. They're very cool. Or partial eclipses, when the shadow kind of grazes over the moon. Those are something that can be seen, and they're really cool. And so the lunar eclipses, write this down. Remember, if it's white, you got it right. So a lunar eclipse is when the moon moves through the Earth's shadow. Okay, write that down. If it's in white, you got it right. So basically what happens for a total solar eclipse total lunar eclipse is when the moon moves all the way into the Earth's shadow and then comes back out. So there's that whole phase where it's moving into it because it's just the speed of the moon, and it takes a whole month to go around. And so it takes a long time as it slowly enters the Earth's shadow and then stays there for a while and slowly comes out from behind the Earth's shadow. And so, that's kind of cool. Now, a partial lunar eclipse is when it goes through only part of the Earth's shadow. It's not quite lined up right. It just kind of grazes the shadow, in which case you can see the shadow over the top of the moon. Now, anybody who's here on the back side of the Earth in the nighttime sky, looking at it and seeing this happen, will be able to see that lunar eclipse, no matter where you are, as long as you're in that side of the Earth. Now, if you're over here on the daylight side of the Earth, you're not going to see squat. But because, while it's happening, you're looking at the sun side, not the moon side. Okay, so here you go. That's the, notice the shadow here, though. It has two different names, two different parts. The umbra is when it's entirely covering. The whole sun is blocked by the Earth. The penumbra is when part of the sun is blocked by the Earth. Okay, this is, let me see if I can see what it looks like. If you're in the umbra, this is, I think, confusing to kids sometimes. So here's the sun and here's the moon. If you're in the penumbra, the whole thing gets blocked. Right? If you're in the umbra, only part of it is being blocked. Okay, so that's what's going on with the penumbra. It's where there's the partial, where it's partly being blocked. Okay, so some of the light is being blocked, but not all of it. Okay, so you should have this written down now. The umbra, then, is the complete shadow. The penumbra is the partial shadow. Pen means almost or next to. It's kind of a cool little prefix for words. Umbra, it's the same root word for umbrella. It means to cover or the shadow. Okay, so what's going on with the umbra and the penumbra and the lunar eclipse. Okay, let's draw a little diagram here. Now, here's a little interesting thing. The light source here is long and skinny, the one that's on my ceiling here. So it's not going to be round, but you can see the umbra and the penumbra. Here's the shadow here. That's the penumbra. If your eyeball was down here, you'd look up, you'd be able to see the lights, but you can see how it gets darker. Boop, right there. That would be, this part right here is now the umbra, and that would be the penumbra. Now it's long and skinny this way because it's a long and skinny light source. If it was round light source like the sun, it would be a round penumbra. So I didn't really mean to write on the paper there, but oh well, let's go ahead and just do this now. The umbra and the penumbra. So if you have the sun, it has some size to it. Now if the sun was just a point source, it wouldn't have a penumbra if it was just a single point. Boop. But there's size to the sun, and the light's coming from every part of that the sun there. And let's just say here's now we're talking about a lunar eclipse, right? And so here's the Earth, and then here's the moon. Okay, so what's going on then is you have the area where the sun's going and is shining on the earth, shining on the earth. Now, any of the light that's blocked by the earth is going to, it's going to be the shadow, right? Wherever the earth is, there's where the shadow is. And here's where, that's where you get the total lunar eclipse. So here's the sun, Earth, and moon. And this would be a total lunar eclipse. This is the umbra. So let's just go ahead and write umbra. Okay. Now this is not the umbra. There is no umbra there. That's just where the light is shining. It's only after the Earth gets shined on by let's darken that up a little bit, absorbs that light, the part behind it is in shadow, right? Okay, I think you can kind of get that idea. All right, now what happens though is you get the area where it would be partly blocked, like here, anywhere here. Like if your eyeball was over here, what you'd see is part of the sun is blocked by the earth, right? It would be a partial blockage. And then the penumbra here. So penumbra is just an area where there's less light when you're looking at the reflected light off the moon. Okay, so this is the penumbra. And we aren't, if you were on the moon right here, you'd see a solar eclipse caused by the earth, right? But we're not on the moon, we're on the earth. So all we see when we see a lunar eclipse, all we see is the moon moves into the Earth's shadow. Okay, so there's a lunar eclipse for you. Now, here's what I want you to think about. From what you know about the phases of the moon, what phase is the moon in when it's on the opposite side of the sun? What phase is that? Over here it would be a new moon, because what you'd see would be in the same side as the sun. The waxing crescent, first quarter, waxing gibbous. What is that? Full moon. Okay, so here what we have, it's a full moon. Okay, so the full moon, in fact, that's the fullest moon you're ever going to see, where it's completely so exactly on the opposite side of the sun that it actually gets blocked by the Earth's shadow. So it only happens during the full moon phase. Okay?